The coffee shop was busier than usual that Saturday afternoon. People chatted over their lattes, laptops clicked away in corners, and the smell of fresh pastries filled the air. But 23-year-old Elena sat at her small table by the window, completely unaware of the noise around her. She couldn't hear any of it. She had been deaf since birth. Elena smoothed down her blue dress for the 100th time and checked her phone again. Her date was now 15 minutes late. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. This was her first blind date in over a year, and she was terrified. Her best friend Rachel had set this up. "Trust me, Elena. David is amazing. He's funny, he has a good job, and I already told him about you. He said he's totally fine with it." Rachel had been so enthusiastic that Elena couldn't say no, even though a part of her wanted to. Dating had never been easy for Elena. Most guys seemed interested at first, but once they realized she was deaf, things changed. Some would ghost her completely. Others would stick around for one awkward date and then disappear. A few had been honest enough to tell her they just couldn't handle the communication barrier. Each rejection had left a scar, making her build walls higher and higher around her heart. But Rachel had promised this time would be different. David was supposedly open-minded and kind. So Elena had spent an hour doing her makeup, curling her hair, and picking out her favorite dress. She had practiced what she wanted to say in her head, rehearsing how she'd explain her deafness if he somehow didn't already understand. At 25 minutes late, Elena saw him walk through the door. She knew it was David from the photo Rachel had shown her. He was tall, wearing a gray sweater, and looking around the cafe. Elena waved to catch his attention, and when their eyes met, she smiled warmly. But David didn't smile back. Not really. His lips curved slightly, but his eyes looked uncomfortable. He walked over, slowly, almost reluctantly, and sat down across from her. Elena's heart sank a little, but she tried to stay positive. Maybe he was just nervous. She started signing, her hands moving in fluid, graceful gestures as she introduced herself. She spoke with her hands the way others spoke with their voices, expressing warmth and friendliness. David stared at her hands like they were something alien. His face went from uncomfortable to panicked. He pulled out his phone quickly and started typing. He turned the screen toward her. The message read, "Hi." Elena nodded and signed back. "It's okay. I'm glad you made it." But David wasn't watching her hands. He was looking at his phone again, typing frantically. He showed her another message. "I didn't realize it would be like this." Elena's smile faltered. She typed on her own phone. "Like what? Rachel told you I'm deaf, right?" David shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. He typed back, "Yeah, but I thought you could read lips or something. I don't know. It's really complicated." The words hit Elena like a punch to the stomach. She had heard variations of this before, but it never hurt any less. She tried to keep her composure and typed back, "I can read lips, but it's easier for me to sign. We can text too, like we're doing now. It doesn't have to be complicated. I can read repeating, too ha." End quote. David barely glanced at her message. He was already looking around the cafe, probably planning his escape. He typed quickly, "Look, I'm really sorry, but I don't think I'm the right person for this. I'm just not equipped for this kind of relationship. It's nothing personal. I'm not equipped at Octus. I'm really sorry. I'm just not equipped. I'm really sorry. Nothing personal." Elena had heard that line before too. It was always personal though. It was about her, about who she was, about the part of her she couldn't change even if she wanted to. David stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. He typed one last message. "I have an emergency I need to take care of. Sorry about this." He didn't even wait for her to respond. He just turned and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving Elena sitting there alone with 2 untouched cups of water and a basket of sugar packets she'd been nervously rearranging. Elena sat frozen for a moment, staring at the empty chair across from her. She could feel eyes on her from other tables. People had definitely noticed what just happened. A woman at the next table quickly looked away when Elena glanced in her direction. A couple in the corner whispered to each other, while stealing glances her way. The humiliation was overwhelming. Elena felt her eyes begin to burn with tears, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of all these strangers. She grabbed her purse and pulled out her wallet, hands shaking slightly as she left money on the table for the water she hadn't even touched. This wasn't just about David. This was about every guy who had made her feel like she was too much work, too difficult, too different. This was about every time someone had treated her deafness like it was a disease or a tragedy instead of just a part of who she was. This was about the loneliness that came from being rejected over and over again for something she had no control over. Elena had always tried to stay positive. She had a good life in many ways. She worked as a children's book illustrator, a job she loved that let her work from home. She had her art, her friends, and her small apartment that she decorated exactly how she wanted. She had learned to be independent and strong because she'd had to be. But in moments like this, all that strength felt like it wasn't enough. The world kept reminding her that she was different, and not in a way that people celebrated. She was different in a way that made her unlovable, or at least, that's what it felt like. She thought about her parents, who had always told her she was perfect just the way she was. They had learned sign language when she was a baby, made sure she had every opportunity, and raised her to be confident. But their love couldn't protect her from the real world, from people like David who saw her deafness first and her humanity second. Elena stood up to leave, keeping her head down to avoid eye contact with anyone. She just wanted to get out of there, go home, and maybe eat an entire pint of ice cream while watching her favorite show with captions on. She wanted to call Rachel and tell her that blind dates were officially off the table forever. She wanted to curl up in her bed and convince herself that being alone was actually a choice, not a sentence. As she gathered her things, she felt that familiar ache in her chest. It was the same feeling she got every time someone made her feel less than. It was rejection mixed with shame, mixed with a deep, painful loneliness that was hard to explain to people who had never experienced it. What Elena didn't know was that someone at the very next table had seen everything. And unlike everyone else who had looked away or whispered, this person was about to do something that would change her life forever. At the table right next to Elena sat a man in his mid-30s named Daniel, having lunch with his 7-year-old daughter Sophie. They had been enjoying their Saturday afternoon together, sharing a plate of cookies and talking about Sophie's week at school. Well, not talking exactly. They were signing to each other, their hands moving in animated conversation. Sophie was deaf, just like Elena. She had been born that way, and Daniel had immediately thrown himself into learning sign language so he could communicate with his daughter. It had become their special language, the way they connected, and Daniel was grateful every day that he'd made that choice. Daniel had noticed Elena sitting alone at the next table when they first arrived. He'd seen her nervousness, the way she kept checking her phone, the hopeful smile on her face. He'd also noticed when her date arrived, and his heart had started to sink as he watched the interaction unfold. Sophie had been watching too. Her young eyes were sharp, and she could read body language better than most adults. When David stood up and walked out, leaving Elena sitting there alone, Sophie's face twisted with anger. She tugged hard on her father's sleeve. "Dad, did you see that?" She signed urgently, her small hands moving fast. "That man was so mean to her. He just left." Daniel nodded, his jaw tight. He had seen everything, and it had made him furious. Not just because it was rude, but because he knew exactly what had happened. He'd seen the way David had reacted to Elena's signing, the discomfort, the quick escape. He'd watched someone treat his daughter's language, their language, like it was a burden. "That lady is like me, isn't she?" Sophie signed, her eyes wide. "She's deaf too." "Yes, sweetheart," Daniel signed back. She is. Sophie looked at Elena, who was now gathering her things with shaking hands, clearly trying not to cry. Sophie's little face was determined. We have to tell her something nice, Dad. She looks so sad. Tell her she's beautiful. And that man was stupid. Daniel hesitated for just a moment. He didn't want to intrude or make Elena uncomfortable. But then he saw a tear slide down her cheek, which she quickly wiped away. Something in his chest tightened. Sophie was right. He couldn't just sit here and watch this woman leave thinking she was somehow not enough. He reached over gently and tapped on Elena's table to get her attention. When she looked up, surprised and a bit wary, Daniel made sure she could see his face clearly. Then, he began to sign. I'm really sorry that happened to you. His hands moved clearly and deliberately. You deserve so much better than someone who can't see your worth. Elena's mouth fell open slightly. She stared at him, in complete shock. Her eyes moved from his face to his hands and back again, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Someone in this cafe actually knew sign language. A stranger had just signed to her, had just reached out in her moment of humiliation. Before Elena could respond, Sophie popped up from her seat and leaned around her father, her face bright with excitement. She signed enthusiastically, her hands bouncing with childish energy. You're really pretty. That man was dumb. My name is Sophie. This is my dad, Daniel. Do you want to come sit with us? Please? Daniel gave his daughter a look that was half apology, half amusement. Sophie, give her some space. He signed. But he was smiling. His daughter had no filter. And honestly, he was grateful for it right now. Elena looked between them, and slowly, the sadness on her face began to crack. A small smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She signed back, her movements a little hesitant at first. You both know sign language? It's our first language at home, Daniel signed. Sophie is deaf too. We saw what happened, and we just wanted you to know that guy was an idiot. Sophie nodded vigorously, making her ponytail bounce. A big idiot, she added for emphasis. For the first time since David had walked out, Elena actually laughed. It was a soft laugh, a little watery, but genuine. She looked at Sophie's eager face and Daniel's kind eyes, and something in her chest loosened. These were strangers, but they understood. They really understood. Would you actually want to join us? Daniel signed, gesturing to the empty seat at their table. No pressure at all, but we have extra cookies, and Sophie won't stop asking until I invite you properly. Elena looked at her table, where she'd been planning to sit alone and feel sorry for herself, then back at this father and daughter who had appeared out of nowhere like some kind of miracle. She made a decision. I'd really like that, she signed, picking up her purse. Thank you. As Elena moved to their table, Sophie practically bounced in her seat with excitement. Daniel pulled out the chair for Elena and gave her an encouraging smile. Once she was settled, Sophie immediately pushed the plate of cookies toward her. These are really good, Sophie signed. Dad let me pick them out. I got chocolate chip, oatmeal raisin, and snickerdoodle. The snickerdoodle is the best. Elena selected a snickerdoodle and took a small bite. You're right, she signed back. It is the best. Sophie beamed like she'd just won a prize. I knew it. Dad always picks oatmeal raisin. But that's boring. Oatmeal raisin is not boring, Daniel defended himself with exaggerated offense. It's sophisticated. It's boring, Sophie insisted, and Elena found herself genuinely smiling now. Daniel turned to Elena, his expression more serious but still warm. I'm Daniel Carter. By the way, I probably should have started with actual introductions, and you've met my daughter Sophie, who apparently has no problem inviting strangers to our table. I'm Elena, she signed. Elena Martinez. And honestly, I'm really grateful Sophie has no problem with that. Today was turning into a disaster. That guy was the disaster, not you. Daniel signed firmly. How long did he even stay? 10 minutes? More like 7. Elena signed with a wry smile. But who's counting? Counting. Sophie looked indignant. 7 minutes? That's so rude. You look so nice. And you have pretty hair. And you seem really cool. Did he even give you a chance? Elena felt her throat tighten with emotion. This little girl, who didn't even know her, was defending her more passionately than her own date had been willing to sit with her. Not really, she signed, honestly. He said it was too complicated. What's complicated? Sophie signed, genuinely confused. You just use your hands to talk instead of your voice. That's not complicated. That's just different. Out of the mouths of children, Elena thought. Sophie had just summed up in 2 sentences what grown adults seemed unable to understand. It wasn't complicated. It was just different. And different didn't mean less. Sophie's right, Daniel signed. There's nothing complicated about you. That guy was just too lazy to try. And that's his loss. Not yours. Elena felt tears threatening again. But this time, they weren't tears of humiliation. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of feeling seen by complete strangers in a way her actual date hadn't bothered to see her. Thank you, she signed simply. Both of you. You have no idea how much I needed this right now. Then we're glad we were here, Daniel signed with a gentle smile. And just like that, Elena's worst day started becoming something else entirely. What was supposed to be a quick coffee turned into 2 hours of conversation that felt like minutes. Elena found herself completely absorbed in talking with Daniel and Sophie, their hands moving in animated discussion about everything and nothing at all. Sophie was full of questions, the kind only a 7-year-old could ask without any self-consciousness. What do you do for work? She signed, her eyes curious and bright. I illustrate children's books, Elena signed back, and Sophie's face lit up like someone had just told her Christmas was coming early. Really? Like, you draw the pictures in books? Sophie's hands moved so fast with excitement that she nearly knocked over her juice. Daniel caught it just in time, giving his daughter an amused look. Yes, exactly like that. Elena signed. I work from home and draw pictures to go with stories. It's my favorite thing to do. That's so cool, Sophie signed. I love drawing. I draw dinosaurs all the time. Do you draw dinosaurs? Sometimes, Elena signed with a smile. I actually just finished a book that had a T-Rex in it. Sophie looked like she might explode with joy. She turned to her father and signed urgently. Dad, did you hear that? She draws dinosaurs. Can I show her my drawings? Please? Daniel laughed and signed back. Your drawings are at home, sweetheart. Maybe another time. Another time? Sophie turned back to Elena hopefully. Does that mean we can see you again? Elena felt her heart do a little flip. The question was so innocent, so genuine, and it came with absolutely no pressure or expectation. Just a child who wanted to share her dinosaur drawings with someone who might appreciate them. I'd really like that. Elena signed. And she meant it more than she expected to. Daniel had been watching the exchange with a warmth in his eyes that Elena was starting to notice. When Sophie turned to grab another cookie, Daniel signed to Elena. Sorry, if she's being too much. She gets excited when she meets other people who sign. There aren't many kids at her school who are hearing, and sometimes I think she forgets that the whole world doesn't use sign language. She's not too much at all, Elena signed honestly. She's wonderful. You're raising an amazing kid. Something shifted in Daniel's expression. A mix of pride and something else Elena couldn't quite name. I'm trying my best. It's just been the two of us for a while now. Elena wanted to ask what he meant, but she didn't want to pry. Fortunately, Sophie was happy to fill in the gaps without being asked. She had finished her cookie and rejoined the conversation. Our mom died 3 years ago, Sophie signed matter-of-factly, the way children sometimes discuss heavy topics with surprising casualness. She got really sick. But Dad takes really good care of me. He learned sign language super fast so we could talk. He's the best dad ever. Elena felt her chest tighten. She looked at Daniel, who gave a small, sad smile. Cancer, he signed simply. It was hard, but we got through it together. Sophie keeps me going every day. I'm so sorry, Elena signed, not knowing what else to say. The words felt inadequate, but Daniel nodded appreciatively. Thank you, he signed. We're doing okay now. Better than okay. Actually, we have a good life, just the two of us. He paused, then added, Sophie keeps me busy. I work from home as a graphic designer, so I can be around for her. Her school is across town, and with her schedule and mine, life is pretty full. That sounds really nice, actually, Elena signed. Having that flexibility to be there for her. It is, Daniel agreed. Though I'll admit, adult conversation is sometimes rare. Most of my friends don't sign, so Sophie and I end up in our own little world a lot. Elena understood that feeling more than she could express. I know what you mean, she signed. My parents and my best friend Rachel know sign language. But beyond that, I'm usually texting or writing things down. It can feel lonely sometimes. It really can, Daniel signed, and their eyes met for a moment with a shared understanding that went deeper than words. Sophie, who had been uncharacteristically quiet while eating yet another cookie, suddenly signed, Are you going to be our friend now? The question was so direct, so hopeful, that Elena felt a lump form in her throat. I'd really love to be your friend, she signed. Good, Sophie signed with satisfaction. Because that other guy was mean, and you need better friends. We can be your better friends. Daniel shook his head with a smile. Sophie, you can't just decide to adopt people. Why not? Sophie signed with perfect 7-year-old logic. You always say we should be kind to people. I'm being kind. And Elena is nice. So now we're friends. Elena couldn't help but laugh. There was something so pure about the way Sophie saw the world. No complications, no awkwardness, just simple human connection. Your daughter is very wise, Elena signed to Daniel. She definitely keeps me honest, Daniel signed back. Elena realized she did want that. More than she'd wanted anything in a long time. These two people, who had been complete strangers an hour ago, felt more comfortable and welcoming than her actual blind date had been. They saw her as a person first, not as someone with a disability or a complication. What are you doing next Saturday? Elena signed, before she could talk herself out of it. Sophie bounced in her seat. Nothing. We never do anything. Well, we do stuff, but nothing important. Right, Dad? Daniel shot his daughter an amused look. We usually go to the park on Saturdays, he signed to Elena. There's a nice one about 10 minutes from here. Sophie likes to feed the ducks and play on the swings. Can Elena come? Sophie signed to her father, then immediately turned to Elena. You should come. It's really fun, and there's an ice cream truck that comes at 3 o'clock, and Dad always lets me get 2 scoops. Sometimes I let you get 2 scoops, Daniel corrected gently. When you've been good all week. I'm always good. Sophie signed with exaggerated innocence that made both adults smile. Elena felt something warm spreading through her chest. Was this really happening? Was she making plans with these people she'd just met? It felt sudden, maybe even a little crazy, but it also felt right in a way she couldn't explain. I'd love to come to the park, Elena signed. If you're sure I wouldn't be intruding on your father-daughter time. You wouldn't be intruding at all, Daniel signed. And the sincerity in his expression made Elena's heart skip. We'd really enjoy having you there. Besides, Sophie would never forgive me if I said no now. Never ever, Sophie confirmed with vigorous nodding. They exchanged phone numbers, which felt both exciting and terrifying to Elena. As they got ready to leave the cafe, Sophie gave Elena an unexpected hug. It was quick and tight. The kind of hug only a child can give, full of complete trust and affection. See you Saturday? Sophie signed when she pulled back. And don't be sad about that mean guy anymore. He was stupid, and you're awesome. As Elena watched Daniel and Sophie leave the cafe together, the little girl's hand tucked safely in her father's, She felt something she hadn't felt when she walked in that afternoon. She felt hope. Not the nervous, fragile hope she'd had for her blind date, but something stronger and more real. Maybe, she thought, some of the best things in life happened when your plans fell apart. Maybe getting rejected at that table had led her to exactly where she needed to be, right at the table next door. She pulled out her phone and texted Rachel. The blind date was a disaster, but I'll tell you about it later. Something else happened, though. Something good. I think I just made some new friends. As Elena walked home that evening, she couldn't stop smiling. The day that had started as one of her worst was ending as something entirely different. And for the first time in a long time, she was actually looking forward to next Saturday. That first Saturday at the park turned into a second Saturday, then a third. Before Elena knew it, 6 weeks had passed, and seeing Daniel and Sophie had become the highlight of her week. What started as park visits expanded into museum trips, movie nights at Daniel's house, with the captions turned on, and lazy Sunday brunches, where Sophie would show Elena her latest drawings. Elena's apartment, which had once felt like a lonely sanctuary, now had Sophie's artwork taped to her refrigerator. A dinosaur with an oddly shaped head, a family of ducks that looked more like colorful blobs, a drawing of the three of them at the park, holding hands, with a bright yellow sun overhead. That last one made Elena's heart ache in the best way possible. She was falling for them. Both of them. She'd fallen for Sophie first, with her infectious energy and unfiltered honesty. The little girl had a way of making Elena feel special, asking her opinions on everything from what color to paint her bedroom to whether T-Rexes could swim. Sophie had started calling her Miss Elena, and had begun drawing pictures specifically for her, presenting them with great ceremony during their weekly meetups. But Daniel was different. What Elena felt for him was deeper, more complicated, and infinitely more terrifying. She'd catch herself watching him when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled at something Sophie signed, or how patient he was when explaining things to his daughter. She noticed how he always made sure Elena had a clear view of everyone's faces during group conversations, positioning himself so she could see both him and Sophie at the same time. Little things that showed he was thinking about her comfort without making a big deal out of it. The problem was that Elena had convinced herself it was all in her head. Daniel was just being kind, she told herself. He was a good father who was teaching his daughter to be inclusive and compassionate. That's all this was. He probably saw Elena as a good influence on Sophie, maybe even a friend. But nothing more. She didn't see the way Daniel's gaze lingered on her when she laughed. She didn't notice how he'd started putting extra effort into his appearance on Saturdays, or how he always suggested her favorite places to visit. She missed the way his face lit up whenever his phone buzzed with a text from her. Daniel was completely in love with Elena, but he was terrified of moving too fast. He knew she'd been hurt before. That disastrous blind date wasn't the first rejection she'd faced, and he could see the walls she'd built around her heart. He didn't want to scare her away by confessing his feelings too soon, so he waited, hoping that eventually she'd see what was right in front of her. One Thursday evening, Elena received a text from Daniel that made her smile. Sophie's school is doing a small showcase tomorrow night where the kids present projects they've been working on. Sophie really wants you to come. No pressure, but she's been practicing her presentation all week and keeps asking if you'll be there. Elena didn't hesitate. I'd love to come. What time? 7. Fair warning. There will be a lot of excited 7-year-olds signing at once. It might be chaos. Sounds perfect, Elena texted back. The next evening, Elena arrived at Sophie's school, nervous for reasons she couldn't quite explain. She'd bought a small bouquet of flowers for Sophie, hoping it wasn't too much. Daniel met her at the entrance, and the smile on his face when he saw her made her heart do that annoying flutter thing it had been doing a lot lately. You came, he signed, looking genuinely happy. Of course I came, Elena signed back. I wouldn't miss this. Sophie spotted them from across the room and came running over, nearly crashing into Elena with the force of her hug. You're here. You're here. Did you see my poster? It's over there. I worked so hard on it. I brought you these, Elena signed, handing Sophie the flowers. For good luck. Sophie's eyes went wide. For me? Really? She held the flowers like they were made of gold. Dad, can we put these in water? I want to keep them forever. After helping Sophie find a cup for her flowers, they found seats near the front. The showcase began, and Elena watched as child after child presented projects about their families, their pets, their favorite hobbies. When it was Sophie's turn, she walked to the front of the room with confidence that made Daniel beam with pride. Sophie's project was a poster titled, My Family. On it were photos and drawings. Pictures of Daniel and Sophie at various ages. A photo of a woman Elena assumed was Sophie's mother, beautiful and smiling. And then, to Elena's shock, there was a recent photo of the three of them at the park, the one Daniel had taken just 2 weeks ago. Beneath it, Sophie had written in careful letters. Elena felt her throat tighten as Sophie began her presentation, her small hands signing enthusiastically. This is my family. I used to have a mom, but she died when I was 4. I miss her a lot. But my dad says she's always watching over us. My dad is the best dad in the world. He learned sign language for me, and he makes me pancakes on Sundays, and he always helps me with my homework even when it's hard. Then Sophie pointed to Elena's photo. This is Miss Elena. She's not my mom, but she's very special to us. She's an artist, and she's really pretty. And she's deaf like me. She's my friend. And she's my dad's friend too. I hope she stays with us forever, because she makes my dad smile more than he used to. Elena couldn't breathe. She glanced at Daniel, who looked just as surprised as she felt. He clearly hadn't known Sophie was going to include her in the family project. His face had turned slightly red, but he was also smiling. That soft smile Elena had come to recognize. After the presentations ended, Sophie ran back to them, practically vibrating with excitement. Did you like it? Did I do good? You did amazing, sweetheart, Daniel signed, pulling his daughter into a hug. Elena knelt down to Sophie's level. It was the best presentation I've ever seen, she signed truthfully. I'm honored that you included me in your family project. Well, you're part of our family now, Sophie signed matter-of-factly. Right, Dad? Daniel looked at Elena, and something passed between them. Something unspoken but powerful. Right, he signed softly. Later that evening, after the showcase ended and other families had left, the three of them walked to the parking lot together. Sophie was exhausted from all the excitement and had fallen asleep in Daniel's arms, her head resting on his shoulder. I'm sorry if that made you uncomfortable, Daniel signed one-handed, careful not to wake Sophie. I didn't know she was going to include you in her project like that. It didn't make me uncomfortable, Elena signed. It made me feel. She paused, trying to find the right signs for what she felt. It made me feel like I belong somewhere. With you two. And Daniel stopped walking and looked at her. Really looked at her. You do belong with us, he signed. At least, I hope you feel that way. These past few weeks with you have been incredible. Sophie adores you, and I. He hesitated, then continued. I really care about you, Elena. A lot. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. I care about you too, she signed, her hands trembling slightly. Both of you. More than I probably should after such a short time. There's no should when it comes to feelings, Daniel signed. They just are what they are. Before Elena could respond, Sophie stirred in Daniel's arms and opened her eyes sleepily. She looked at Elena, then at her father, then smiled knowingly, despite being half asleep. Are you guys gonna get married? She signed with childlike bluntness. Sophie, Daniel signed, looking mortified. But Elena laughed, a real, genuine laugh that came from somewhere deep inside her. Maybe we should start with dinner first, she signed to Sophie. Just the three of us. What do you think? Sophie perked up immediately, suddenly much more awake. Like a real family dinner, Elena confirmed. Tomorrow? Sophie signed hopefully. Daniel looked at Elena, his expression asking if she was sure about this. Elena nodded. She'd never been more sure of anything in her life. Tomorrow, Daniel signed to his daughter, then looked at Elena with so much warmth it made her feel like she was glowing from the inside out. As Elena drove home that night, she thought about how strange life was. 2 months ago, she'd been sitting in that cafe, feeling unwanted and unlovable. Now she had a little girl who drew her pictures and wanted her at family events, and a man who looked at her like she hung the moon. The dinner turned into weekly dinners. Weekly dinners turned into Elena, spending most of her evenings at Daniel's house. She'd bring her laptop and work on her illustrations at his kitchen table while he worked on design projects, and Sophie would do her homework between them, occasionally interrupting to show them a particularly good answer or ask for help with a difficult problem. It felt natural, like pieces of a puzzle fitting together in a way that made sense. But Elena still held back from fully believing it was real. She kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Daniel to realize that being with her was too complicated, or for some sign that this was all temporary. 3 months after they'd met, Daniel showed up at Elena's apartment on a Tuesday evening, which was unusual. They typically saw each other on weekends and a few weeknights, but always at his place or out somewhere. Never spontaneously like this. Elena opened the door to find him standing there, looking nervous in a way she'd never seen before. He was holding a small box and what looked like a letter. "Is everything okay?" Elena signed, suddenly worried. "Is Sophie all right?" "Sophie's fine," Daniel signed quickly. "She's with my mom for the evening. I wanted to talk to you alone." Elena's heart started racing. This was it, she thought. This was when he'd tell her that this wasn't working, that she was too much, that he'd been trying but it was just too hard. She'd been preparing herself for this moment even though she'd been hoping it would never come. Daniel came inside and sat down on her couch, gesturing for her to sit beside him. He took a deep breath, then handed her the letter. "I wrote this because I wanted you to have my words to keep, not just see them signed and gone." He signed. "I need you to understand something, and I want to make sure I say it right." Elena's hands were shaking as she opened the letter. It was several pages long, written in Daniel's neat handwriting. She began to read. In a low, "Dear Elena, I've been trying to figure out the right time to tell you this, but I've realized there's no perfect moment. There's just now. And the truth is, I can't keep it inside anymore. From that first day in the cafe, when I saw you sitting there alone after that guy walked out on you, something in me recognized something in you. Maybe it was the loneliness I saw in your eyes, because I'd felt that same loneliness. Maybe it was watching you try so hard to hold yourself together when you deserved to fall apart. Or maybe it was just you, exactly as you are, and something in my heart knew. I watched you join our table that day and saw how you lit up when you talked to Sophie. I saw how patient you were with her endless questions. How you treated her signing as the beautiful language it is, instead of something to be pitied or fixed. You saw my daughter as a complete person, not a child with a disability. And that meant everything to me. But it became about more than Sophie pretty quickly. It became about the way you laugh with your whole body, throwing your head back without caring what you sound like. It became about how passionate you get when you talk about your art, your hands moving so fast I can barely keep up. It became about the way you always remember how Sophie likes her sandwiches cut diagonally, and how you taught her that trick for drawing dragon scales. It became about how you make my house feel like a home again. How you've brought light and color back into rooms that felt gray for so long. How Sophie asks about you every single day. But honestly, I think I miss you even more than she does when you're not around. I know you've been hurt before. I know people have made you feel like your deafness is a burden or a complication. But Elena, loving you isn't complicated. It's the easiest, most natural thing I've ever felt. Communicating with you isn't hard. It's a privilege. Getting to know you, To see the world through your eyes, to be part of your life, has been the greatest gift. I'm in love with you. Not despite anything. Not because of anything. Just because you're you. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that you deserve every good thing this world has to offer. I understand if you need time, or if you're not ready, or if you don't feel the same way. But I couldn't let another day go by without you knowing the truth. You've changed our lives, Elena. You've changed my life. And I hope with everything in me that you'll want to be part of it permanently. Love, Daniel. By the time Elena finished reading, tears were streaming down her face. She looked up at Daniel, who was watching her anxiously, his hands already positioned to sign. Please say something, he signed. Even if it's no. Even if you need time. Just tell me what you're thinking. Elena set the letter down carefully, like it was something precious that might break. Then she signed, her hands moving slowly because she needed him to understand every word. I've been so scared, she signed. Every single person who ever tried to date me made me feel like I was asking for too much just by existing. Like my deafness was this huge obstacle they'd have to overcome to be with me. I built walls so high because I couldn't take being rejected one more time. Daniel started to respond, but Elena held up a hand. But you never made me feel that way, she continued. Not even for a second. You and Sophie made me feel like I was exactly enough. Exactly as I am. You made me feel seen and valued and wanted. And that terrified me because I kept thinking, this can't be real. This can't last. Something will go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong, Daniel signed firmly. I promise you. I know that now, Elena signed, fresh tears falling. Because I read your letter, and I finally understand that you see me the same way I see you. I'm in love with you too, Daniel. I've been in love with you probably since that first day when you told me I deserved better. I just couldn't let myself believe I could have this. Daniel's face broke into the biggest smile Elena had ever seen. You can have this, he signed. You can have all of this. Me, Sophie, terrible dad jokes, dinosaur drawings on every surface, movie nights with captions, burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings, all of it. It's yours, if you want it. I want it. Elena signed, laughing and crying at the same time. I want all of it. Daniel pulled her into a hug, and Elena buried her face in his shoulder, feeling like she was finally home. When they pulled apart, Daniel picked up the small box he'd brought with him. This isn't what you think it is, he signed quickly. Elena opened the box to find a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm in the shape of a hand forming the sign for I love you, so you can keep it with you, Daniel signed. Elena put on the bracelet with shaking hands, then pulled Daniel in for a kiss. It was sweet and soft and full of promise. The kind of kiss that marks the beginning of something real. 6 months later, Elena moved in with Daniel and Sophie. Her artwork joined Sophie's drawings on the refrigerator. Her books filled the shelves next to Daniel's design magazines. Her coffee mug sat in the cabinet next to theirs, like it had always been there. A year after that, Daniel proposed properly, with Sophie hiding under the table at that same cafe where they'd first met, holding a sign that read, Say yes. When Elena said yes, Sophie popped out cheering, and everyone in the cafe applauded, even though most of them didn't know the whole story. They got married in a small ceremony where every word was signed as well as spoken, where Sophie stood between them as their flower girl and junior maid of honor, and where Elena finally understood that she'd never been too much or too complicated. She'd just been waiting for the right people to find her. Sometimes Elena thought about that terrible blind date, about sitting alone at that table feeling worthless and unwanted. She couldn't quite bring herself to regret it, though, because it had led her to the table right next to it, where her family had been waiting all along. Rachel, Elena's best friend, liked to joke that it was the best, worst date in history. And Elena had to agree. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives are actually doorways to the best ones. Sometimes rejection is just redirection. And sometimes When one person walks away, the right people walk in. Elena touched the bracelet on her wrist, the one she never took off, and watched Daniel chase Sophie around their backyard while their dog barked excitedly. This was her life now. Not perfect, but real and full, and hers. She'd finally found her place. Not in spite of who she was, but because of it. And that made all the difference.